Did you see the fireworks? Fireworks, and it's not even the 4th of July. Did you see it? Did you
Yes.
see the fireworks?
Was that
From
fireworks?
Yeah, there's fireworks.
Oh, okay.
You know why it's fireworks? Because let's talk, but today we're not going to be so explosive, but sometimes it can be. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules to join me on Let's Talk. My name is Janice, and I'll be your host this evening. And I'm joined by two beautiful ladies that happen to also be my sisters. Let me introduce them. I have Cynthia out of Indianapolis. Cynthia, can you raise your hand so they'll know who you are? Cynthia is the CEO of Oda Enterprises. Cynthia is also an elected board member of Pike Township Trustees in Indianapolis and the president of the National Coalition of Black Women Indianapolis Chapter. And Elizabeth resides in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is partnered with a health and wellness company. She is an independent marketing executive. Give them a wave, Liz. And welcome, ladies. How's your day? How is it in Indianapolis and Charlotte, respectively? How's the weather there?
Hot, humid.
Is it 90?
Hot and humid.
90?
88 degrees. No, 88 here today.
Not bad. Not bad.
Oh, that's not bad.
What about you, Cindy? How is it there?
I think it's 80 something. I'm not really sure because I've been out and about all day and I just been, perspiring. But it's because it's so humid.
Yeah, that's it.
It's really humid.
Because it's only 80 something here, but it felt like 90, and I got out of that stuff quick.
It's 82 here.
Where? In Chicago?
Indianapolis.
Oh, it's only 82?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, as you ladies know, I always start my show off with a scripture. For today, the scripture is from Jeremiah 29:11. Everyone knows I know that. I love it. And it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and plans to give you a future." As you guys know, this is one of my favorite scriptures. And it's my favorite because, as you go through life, this thing called life, you see how it has so many ups and downs. At times, it appears that the stars are aligned and everything is going so great. And you ask God and you say, thank you so much. I don't know, I didn't deserve it, but thank you so much. But other times you ask, why me, Lord? It's the ups and downs. But just know that if you're in his will, he does have a plan. Today before this show, I checked the news and I looked at Chicago. I always look at the stats. And I saw so far, this was midday, so it's probably worse. I saw that 16 people have been shot and 4 fatally this weekend. So far, I'm hoping that it's not more, but it probably will be. The weekend is only half over. Why does this appear to be the new normal? Along with the gun violence, we're seeing mass murders. Is the mass murders our new normal? I know there in Indianapolis, when I woke up that morning and I heard about that mass murder, the first thing I did was get on the phone and call you, Cynthia, because it was unnerving. Why do you think they're escalating now? Any input on that? Or you just think people are just going crazy, or they feel like they were locked in and sheltered so much that?
I wish I could say that and really believe that.
That's what I want.
I don't really think that's the issue. I think that you almost think that you're in the wild, wild west. I'm just looking at the news here, and even here today, we had 2 dead, 2 wounded in shooting on Indy's northeast side. We had 1 dead on the south side. This is just today. I mean, and every day we hear these stories of mass shootings, of people being found dead by gunshot wounds or whatever. I mean, when you think of the large picture, the big picture of all of this, we need to really be in constant prayer. And you refer to your scripture, which I simply love, Jeremiah 29:11. I simply love that scripture. But this thing called life, we need to probably take that a little bit more serious. And that we're not going to pop back up if somebody shoots you. We're not this black on black crime or Latino crime or whatever it is, whether it's drugs or whatever, we have to stop it. We have to stop it. And I think that this is something that we put on our politicians, and we put that on a lot of different people, but it really starts with us. And so I don't really have the answer, because I'm in a lot of programs. I do a lot of work when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to all of this craziness out there. We're seeing more and more. Real quick, one person, we had a annual meeting with Drug Free Marion County, and our guest speaker was Tony Williamson, and he's a firefighter, and he's ED of St. Florian Center. A great young man. Tony was talking to us, and the first thing he said was comparing to the runs that the police have had. I mean, the firefighters have had. He had this year, and this was in I think March, when we actually had the annual meeting. He said he quoted 8,300 runs, whether it's fire, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's shootings or whatever, but they had 8,300 runs. That was just the first quarter.
Oh my God.
8,300. I mean, we just sit there like, wow.
I'm surprised. I'm really shocked that they have the bandwidth to even answer and address all those. 8,300 is. Well, it looks like your city have a lot to do. Our city also has a lot of work to do. And you see this kind of nationwide, particularly for large urban areas. But I want to ask you this also, because I think I may have mentioned it to you, Cynthia, but I had to go to the dentist, and I had to go in this suburb about 30 minutes away from the West Side. So it was a predominantly white suburb that I'd rather not mention the name, but it wasn't far at all. And I noticed as I got closer to it, people were kind of staring in the car, like they were looking like, why's she over here? And then as I kind of looked around, everybody driving was white. I mean, the closer I got to the city, I swear I saw no diversity. And the people were very polite. They were driving the speed limit and letting you in. You know, I had no problem with that. I got to the doctor's office. I was so glad to see this lady with a hijab. I said, whoo, because she was kind of brown, and I'm like, yay. But it was a pleasant experience. I'd have to say that. But on the way home, as I got closer to my destination, the driving patterns changed. I live on the West Side. I love my block, but you know, I have to go through on 290 in different places, and the driving got more erratic. Someone almost ran me off the road going like 70 miles an hour in a whatever zone. They were more aggressive. It was just crazy. Where do you get your peace? Why do we see this escalation in urban areas? I've been living in Chicago for a long time and driving the highways a long time. It has never been this bad. Even going home, you see, kids get crazy. We got brothers. They race. They do things like that. But where do you get your peace? You're nervous if you're in one environment. Then you're nervous if you get in another environment. Is it just at home where you get your peace? Or am I just reading too much into this?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Liz, I mean, I really don't know where you get I get my peace at home.
I do too, but it seems like.
Yeah, I do too. And then also keep in mind too, you guys, that it is the summer months and people are coming out now, and plus they have a whole lot of free time on their hand, and we tend to act up.
We do.
Homicides up in Charlotte is up. In fact, so far this year, we have had a total of 45 homicides. And a lot of it have to do with people having free time on their hand, and then also COVID-19 in regards to the CDC stating drop your mask, and then folks are out and about running loose, and it's just the craziness that's happening.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and I think Cynthia touched on something when she talked about black on black crime, and I mean, crime is crime. A family member dead, like she said, they're not going to come back up. If a white police, and I get this because they are here to protect, and I understand this, and to have that infiltrated in the police department at times when you see issues with that is horrific. But it's equally horrific when on the West Side every weekend there are people that are shot. There are babies, there are kids, there are 1-year-old. There was a lady who was mowing her grass and she got shot in the foot. There's another little girl who was in a McDonald's and she got blown away and killed. And you hear this over and over and over every weekend. So there has to be something that Yeah, Cynthia mentioned the politicians, but we as a community collectively have to also do something too. We're doing something very wrong. Anyway, we always get off on these other subjects. So for Let's Talk, I am so glad that you're here. Let's Talk, we are seeking your story. Are you an author, a musician, an entrepreneur, an organization? Do you have a story that would motivate? If so, send me an email to Let's Talk on Indie TV. The email address is inde.letstalk@gmail.com. Again, indie.letstalk@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you and discuss your story. Let's talk. Also, a quick shout out to my partners, Oda Enterprises, and the CEO of Oda Enterprises is here today, Cynthia. We're so happy to have you, and you're making changes within the city of Indianapolis with your programs, and we're just so proud of you. And also GV Entertainment. GV Entertainment, rumor is out, maybe I'm speaking too soon, that they're going to be once again revisiting and doing the theatrical production of David and Bathsheba. It's an adaptation of the biblical story that is modernized, and it was fabulous. We ran it last year or a year and a half ago. It's coming this fall in October in a theater near me. In other words, it'll be in a theater on the west side. Cynthia was fortunate enough to help with that, and she was able to see it too, and it was just a great production. So we're looking forward to having that again. Now let's talk about all the good stuff, all the good news. And this segment is the news you can use. The Ohio American Legion is conducting an investigation after an Army veteran's microphone was turned down when he started to talk about the role of Black Americans in the origins of Memorial Day during a speech on May 31st. When Army Lieutenant Bernard Kempter, who's white, spoke about free Blacks honoring deceased soldiers after the Civil War at the Memorial Day event, his microphone was lowered. One of the organizers of the event admittedly said he dropped the audio. Members of the Hudson American Legion did not want the portion of Kempter's speech to be included because they felt it wasn't relevant to their goal of honoring Hudson's veterans. They claimed to have dropped the audio because talking about the contributions of Black Americans was certainly not relevant to our program for that day. The president of the Hudson American Legion said, "We asked him to modify his speech, and he chose not to do that. So we cut him off." It's not funny. It really is not funny, but it's just what it is. It's just what it is.
Janice, when I read this, I looked up, I didn't realize how Memorial Day was actually started.
And you looked up because you're a researcher too. Come on, talk to me.
And it says Memorial Day was started by former slaves on May 1st, 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina, in honor of 257 dead Union soldiers who had been buried in a mass grave in a Confederate prison camp. And then it says, I didn't realize that we started Memorial Day.
I had heard that.
Did you know that?
Very, very recently. I don't know why it came up. It was another show that I was doing, and it came up, and I was shocked. In fact, this gentleman who was speaking wanted to bring that to light from a historical context. He was speaking at a Memorial Day event, and he told them that he wanted to bring it up, and they said, they kind of suggested he didn't. I don't think he ever thought he'd get cut off, though.
I think, this thing says that they dug up the bodies and worked for 2 weeks to give them a proper burial as gratitude for fighting for their freedom. And then they said they then held a parade of 10,000 people led by 2,800 Black children where they marched and sang and celebrated. That's what started Memorial Day.
Wow.
May 1st, 1965.
Wow.
Something that's not in the history books, by the way.
Exactly.
Well, we don't have to talk about the history books now. We just know recently that I think it was last week, the 100-year, it was a 100-year anniversary of the Oklahoma bombing. And, from a historical context, we're familiar with that, but many people weren't. They never heard of it. Matter of fact, I was talking to someone who I knew, and she said she could not believe this happened. She was a white person, and it was incomprehensible.
That was the second time it happened.
She could not believe it. In Oklahoma?
No, the first time it happened in North Carolina.
It did. You're absolutely right. It wasn't at such a large scale. In Oklahoma, they claim a modest number of deaths was 300, but from what I understand, it was much more than that.
Well, I'm not sure if it was a large scale or not, but they tend to wipe out a whole little town, and they tend to dump all the bodies in the rivers. I don't know. They don't really know how many.
So how could they even guess the 300? That was just, I mean, this was a utopia for Black people. A self-sufficient area that was about 35 blocks or so. They had their own hospital, their own bank, their own schools, their own libraries. Just, they were totally self-sufficient. They had better houses, better built houses. It was just an insulated, beautiful community. It was something that one would dream of living in, and they bombed it.
And and then I think there are 3 survivors.
Yeah, 107. One is 107 years old.
And you know what they gave them?
No.
$300,000.
$300,000.
$300,000.
Wow.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, it wasn't they gave them. It was a trio. I mean, a group. You know what I'm trying to say? That's what they compensated them with. It wasn't like the government or nothing like that.
No, they just gave them like a gift or
yes. No, but 300. I think that was in reference to what they said was the 300 bodies that they,
Yeah, they
have no way of knowing.
This 300. Interesting. This next story, sickle cell trait is being used as a cover-up in custody deaths. Now, if there are any medical folks that are listening, you can please, shed some light on this, because everyone is familiar with the sickle cell trait and the sickle cell disease. And from what I understand, the sickle cell disease is something that, you would know about. You would probably has been in the hospital a couple times. With the trait, it's many people don't even know that they have it, but if they marry somebody with the trait, or if whatever, they can have a child with the disease. So I'm going to continue reading this story, and then I'll ask the question. A recent investigation into the use of the sickle cell trait as a cause for death revealed that dozens of Black families are still waiting for justice after their loved one died in police custody. The sickle cell trait was mentioned as a cause for death in the Derek Chauvin case. The attorneys for Chauvin, the Minneapolis officer convicted of killing George Floyd, invoked the sickle cell trait in an attempt to dismiss the case. They were, of course, unsuccessful. However, the New York Times shows at least 47 different cases over the last 20 years that were dismissed because they said the folks died of the trait. One of those cases was Lamont Perry. He was chased into Whitesburg, North Carolina woods by law enforcement. Reports say his body was found in those same woods with blunt force trauma to the head and fractured bones. Perry's family was not able to see the body until after the autopsy, where a medical examiner documented that his cause of death was the sickle cell trait. The 47 Black men that died in police custody over the last 20 years were only carriers of the trait. They did not have the disease. The families of many of the victims who died in police custody did not have the money to challenge the dismissals of their cases after medical examiners documented sickle cell trait as their cause of death. The New York Times investigation found dozens of cases dating back in the 70s that used sickle cell trait as a cause of death. Now, anyone out there who's a doctor, medico, or work in hospitals, the probability of sickle cell trait because they're in jail and them dying of that sickle cell trait is probably minimal. Cynthia, you were going to say something?
I don't think you really have to be a doctor to figure this out. Normally, how the trait works is if I would marry somebody with the trait or even with the disease, and if I have a child, they're probably end up with the trait. You could only get the trait from one of your parents. Simple as that, or both your parents, because everybody does not get the disease. If you marry 2 people with the trait, you would get the disease. That's why they go into genetic counseling, so that you understand your background and you understand how sickle cell works. Now, sickle cell is a very painful. Your cell sickle, and it does cause a lot of pain, and you have episodes. And you normally have to go to the hospital, to get a blood transfusion and all that other stuff that they do to you. But it's a very painful thing to watch somebody actually.
That's what
go
they
through
say.
that. Yeah, because you think about it, your cells are sickling, and you're in all this pain, and you can't do nothing about it.
Yeah.
And it's and that's why it's important that we have genetic counseling, because if you marry someone, or if, because people don't understand, like you said, sometimes people might have it and not even know they have a trait.
Right.
Because it's not nothing that, you could easily have it and not know that you do not have that trait. So you have to really, do counseling. But if two traits marry, you will get, yes, that's a big problem. But as for all these people dying of the trait, I really can't say, because it's been so long. When I worked at March of Dimes, I was really more into all of this, because that's what we, talked about a lot. But I really can't say. I've never heard of no one dying of the trait. I'm not saying that they can't, but you could die from anything, really. I mean, let's be for real. But I have heard of people dying from the disease.
Oh yeah, dying young too.
Yeah, and dying extremely young.
Yeah. Nidra Ruffin, daughter of Temptations legend David Ruffin, passed away on May 19th from COVID-19 complications. The 58-year-old Detroiter was admitted to Beaumont Hospital on Mother's Day after facing health challenges in recent years. In addition to her dying from COVID, it should also be noted that former Temptation lead singer Bruce Williamson also passed away from COVID-19 in September of 2020, early on in the disease. Williamson joined the Temptations in 2006 and performed with the group until 2015, singing lead on the Back to the Front and Still Here albums. I never personally, I think I saw Nidra Ruffin one time on, she was talking about her father, Unsung Heroes, and she kind of was talking about him and how it was growing up with him, but that's the only time I'd seen her. It's a shame. We've lost so many to COVID-19.
Many people.
And in spite of this ambiguous information that we're getting from the CDC and everyone else about don't wear a mask or wear a mask or do this, and people are like going in now, which I didn't notice before, people are going in places without a mask on and nobody's saying anything. Now, I do understand why people in retail or whatever aren't saying anything, because some of these people get violent and they're thinking, wait, now I love my job, but not enough to die for it. But now I see them more freely just walking around, and these are probably the ones that aren't vaccinated. COVID hasn't went anywhere. COVID has not went anywhere. In fact, it's morphing, and you're seeing different variations of it, as you'd expect. And as people get in the population and become in close proximity, I'm just glad, well, it's still early, but for Memorial Day, it doesn't look like there was a lift, and I'm glad there wasn't, and I hope there isn't. I hope that people continue staying on track to prevent it, but just know that, as the cities open up, we're opening up June 11th, I heard, Chicago. It's not gone. It's not, we haven't eradicated it. I think that you should still wear a mask. I'm glad the places are open now, but we still have to be careful with the hand washing and stuff. Look, we almost eliminated the flu this past season. This is a good thing. Now, you guys, you talk about Michael Jackson. He had something there.
I have two things to say. First of all, I was in Georgia this weekend.
Right.
Last weekend.
Well, last weekend.
Memorial Day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We were in Georgia, and I found a mixture of people. Some people wore masks all the time, and a lot of places, because Georgia's open, did not wear a mask. We wore masks. Whenever Liz and the group of us went out, we always wore masks. We're all vaccinated, at least the ones that we were, hanging out with. But that still does not mean anything, because you're still around a mixture of people, and so I don't really trust that. But then when I was on the road, by the time I got to when we stopped in Tennessee, it was a mixture. Even at the gas station where people had masks on and some did not. Nobody said nothing.
Yeah.
But when I got to Indiana, they all had masks on.
In Indiana?
Yes, even though our state is open.
I was gonna say Indiana's open.
Yeah, but Indianapolis is not open.
Yeah, Marion County, right?
Yeah, Dr. Kane and our mayor Hosted, we're not open. I think we're supposed to be opening up June 7th, but that's temporary because Dr. Kane want us to at least get about 50% vaccinated. I think right now we're like at 39%.
I got a question. What is Dr. Kane, what is Dr. Kane's role now in Indianapolis?
She's a health commissioner
of the city?
Marion County Health Department, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
really?
She's up there, yeah. You know Dr. Kane.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
Yeah,
you keep saying Dr. Kane. I'm like, why you say, what is she doing?
Exactly. Yeah. She's a health commissioner, and I think, and I admire her because her and the mayor is under a lot of scrutiny because these people do not want to wear these masks. They do not want to wear these masks, but and I'm not sure, Liz, what's going on in North Carolina.
Well, in regards to North Carolina, in regards to the cases so far, we had a total of 1.1 million cases and 13,168 deaths. In regards to the U.S. total of deaths, 597,000 deaths, COVID cases that's in the U.S. And then in regards to the cases, it's 33.4 million. So 33.4 million cases and 597,000 deaths. So keep in mind,
you guys wear masks there though in Charlotte? Do you see people wearing masks when they're going about?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't go out a whole lot in Charlotte.
You're right.
I don't go out either.
You're
I
right,
just
Liz.
go out on the weekends, and then on the weekends, so that's when I exercise. And pretty much anytime that I exercise, I don't wear a mask.
Well, no, it's hard to breathe. No, but I mean, like
you're
going to the store.
You're running.
What about going to the store and like going to?
I don't go to the store.
How you get groceries, Liz?
Vince goes to the store.
Oh, I'm done.
Yeah,
okay. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, I don't go to the store.
The next story is about your old president. Sources tell CNN Jim Acosta that former President Donald Trump is asking allies what they think about a baseless theory, peddled by conservative commentators and others, that he could be reinstated as your president by August 2021. I've been hearing this. I've been hearing rumblings of this. That's the only reason I brought it up. That follows on reporting from the New York Times and the Washington Post that Trump is convinced that he will at some point this summer be reinstated as president once a variety of kooky and non-credible audits come to fruition. Trump has become so fixated on the audits that he suggested recently to allies that their success could result in his return to the White House this year by August, according to people familiar with comments he has made. I've been hearing rumblings about this for the past couple of weeks, that he's going to be back in the office by August. Anyway, thought I'd just bring that.
On your birthday, Janice, August 16th?
Whatever. Happy birthday,
That's funny.
I know, that's kind of sick.
I don't think none of this is funny. I don't think this is very serious because this man is so delusional. And he is doing all he could do to just it just brings a lot of confusion. It's almost like the Willie Lynch mentality. How you keep people in line, just have a mass amount of confusion. That's all you got to do. Just keep them confused.
And they're going to they very well may try to do another coup because when they did it January 6th, I mean, think about it. What sparked that? I could see them attempting to do it again.
Whew. Don't we need prayers, you guys? We need some prayers.
All the time, always. Let's see what's happening in Israel. After the 2019 election, Naftali Bennett's right-wing party failed to cross the electoral threshold and had no seats in Israel's parliament. 2 years later, he's on his way, on the verge of becoming the country's next prime minister. A former chief of staff to then opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu, Bennett could now unseat his former boss, bringing an end to Netanyahu's run as the country's longest-serving prime minister. It looked like he's going to get in office. I think he probably will. This is going to be really historic. Mm-hmm. Bennett has signed into a historic coalition agreement with the centrist leader Yair Lapid, who brought together a wide swath of political parties as part of a change coalition to oust Netanyahu. including a far-left party, and even for the first time in Israeli history, an Arab-Israeli party. If Israel's parliament signs off on the deal in the coming days, Bennett will take the top job for the first 2 years of a 4-year term, followed by Lepid. They'll go back and forth. He will sit alongside politicians with completely opposing ideologies to his own. Serena Williams has quietly been inching closer to making tennis history amid all the drama surrounding Naomi Osaka's withdrawal from the French Open. While much of the discussion surrounding the French Open has been about players' mental health and the mandatory media duties that have played a role in the formal for Osaka, and rightfully so, one aspect that has seemingly been overlooked is that winning the tournament would give Serena an equal number of the record 24 slam victories that's been held for decades. Winning the French Open would also put Williams, who's 39, in a good position to finally break the record while competing at the U.S. Open this summer in what's been one of her favorite tournaments. It also can't be ignored that not only has a world #1 women's tennis player left the French Open with an injury, but Osaka's absence also likely increases chances at winning in Paris significantly. And that's the news you can use at Indies Let's Talk. But let me ask you something. What do you feel about Osaka? She obviously did not want to be interviewed. She had anxiety. She's expressed it before. She did an interview for after one of the games and got fined $15,000. I don't know if the fines is every time she refused to do it, and she dropped out for her own mental health. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think is what you said at the end. She dropped out for her own mental health.
Which she should.
This is her mental health. We have no right to impose what we feel should take place on her. She has to take care of herself. So she did the right thing. I wouldn't give a darn about the money or anything else. If you want to find me, because they're going to always find something, but it's nothing more important than my mental health.
Right.
And that's and so she took that stance. Everybody don't like that stuff.
I mean, sports people, when they finish even basketball, football, whatever, they have to interview or they get fined. I mean, even though she has told, there was one time last year in a prior game, she had to have someone hold her hand to get interviewed because she gets anxiety. So this is not.
Janice, here's the key. You're right. You're saying they have to interview, then she's willing to pay the fine. Just like Muhammad Ali was willing to go to prison.
And she did pay the fine, and then she walked away and said, you know what, forget this.
That's right.
I'm not giving all my money to no fine. I might as well go home and go to bed or whatever. No, go home and take care of myself.
That's right. I mean,
that's right.
Mental illness is no joke. I mean,
anxiety is no joke.
And that's part of mental. I mean, that's part of your mental stability.
That's
is
right.
Your anxiety.
That's right.
I mean, I don't understand it because I would have, I'll be sitting there glowing. Yeah, I won. Yeah,
Girl, you see, but that's not, you're not anxious about that. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you're anxious about anything, but people who are, there's a lot of people who don't like to speak publicly, who an interview, man, they would just it would just freak them out.
Yeah, but speaking publicly, it's like whenever I have to go on stage and talk, of course you're nervous.
Well, that's natural.
I'm always nervous. But this is an interview after you lost or after you won a championship, a game or something like that. So people just want to know how you feel and what's going on inside of you now. She's not able to express that.
Right. So she got to walk away.
And she got to pay that fine.
And I'm hoping that she can find a platform to still do what she loves and play tennis, and either be able to interview for a minimal amount of time or be able to not interview and not get fined every time.
Janice, I didn't know it was mandatory that you had to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Did you, Liz?
Well, yeah. It's because even like with Cam Newton and stuff, but Cam doesn't like to interview a whole lot, especially once he loses. I mean, he did not want to get on camera and the other and have little temper tantrums. But yes, it is mandatory.
Okay, I didn't know that.
To interview.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate. I mean, it's unfortunate that she bowed out because I wanted to see how far that young girl could go. She's awesome. So, but next time. The next segment we're going to talk about is voter suppression, and Cynthia, you were in Georgia, and Liz, you were in Georgia last week, and Georgia on my mind. Georgia has a lot to do with this voter suppression, and it's used as like the first example. But first, I'm just going to talk about what is voter suppression and give the example, and then we can get into it. Voter suppression is a strategy used to influence the outcome of an election by discouraging or preventing specific groups of people from voting. It is distinguished from political campaigning in that campaigning only attempts to change likely voting behavior, or it includes getting someone who wasn't going to vote, persuading them to vote. The tactics of voter suppression range from minor changes that make voting less convenient to physically intimidating and even physically attacking prospective voters, which is illegal. Voter suppression can be effective if a significant number of voters are intimidated or disenfranchised. In the toolbox for voter suppression, they close polling sites, they use literacy tests, they've used poll tax in the past, felons are disenfranchised in the past, gerrymandering is one of the tools that they use in their toolbox, voter ID laws that you see popping up now, and they make it harder to vote by mail, which you saw they were even talking about last year during Trump's term of closing and shutting down the post office. One of the most flagrant examples of this in modern times was a 2018 defeat of Stacey Abrams, who nearly became Georgia's governor. Had she won, she would have been the first Black woman to win a governor's race anywhere in the nation. However, she lost due to what some experts describe as the largest mass disenfranchisement in U.S. history. Hundreds of thousands were purged and voting machines were locked up, creating unnecessary lines at Black polling places. A 2018 study also found this was a trend in which Black voters were waiting longer on average than white voters. The problem is much more insidious than reformers would have people think. If reform itself were working, the cases above would not be so easily executable by the most blatantly starch opponents of Black voters. There are now 253 bills in 43 states. 253 bills in 43 states that aim to restrict voting access, according to a recent report by the Brennan Center for Justice. That's a lot of bills. In just the past 2 months, many have said, I've never seen anything like this. Republicans are behind this new wave of voting restrictions, and they control the state houses across the country. Georgia is fascinating because Republicans wrote every aspect of the state voting laws. So they were totally fine with it until it didn't work for them no more. And the second it didn't work for them, now they're trying to change the entire thing. They can't say this voting law or that voting law is a Democratic plot because they did it. Every press release from the Georgia Secretary of State brags that Georgia is a national leader in elections because it has the trifecta of automatic voter registration, early voting, and no excuse absentee voting. And Republicans have now introduced and passed bills through committee to repeal or restrict all three of those things. Ladies, what do you think about voter suppression?
Well, I don't think it's about thinking. Voter suppression is extremely real, and especially if you're an African American or any minority group, whether you're African American, whether you're Latino, it doesn't really matter. That's why, to me, it's not what do you think, it's what can you do about it.
And okay, you know that's a great segue, because that's what we need to talk about. What can be done to stop voter suppression? You know, we see it happening. I don't know if it's happening in Indiana. Do you think when you voted this last time were your lines longer?
Well, I'm not sure if the lines was longer, because I don't think Indiana made it so we could vote anywhere.
Okay.
So that was to our advantage, because before we were actually restricted by our precinct, and stuff like that. But then they changed it; we could vote anywhere. But they got a different way of suppressing you, and sometimes the suppression is not so that you could even see or feel it, because you're thinking it's okay, but it's there. And so, and a lot of ways they got of suppressing you is by district. When they put you in different districts.
The gerrymandering, yeah.
Right. And you're voting for these people because that's who they're the only ones you could actually vote for because they're in your district. People do not understand how important it is to get out and vote, and especially for your local elections. Yeah, I agree. It's important to vote for the president. Of course it is. I'm not saying that that's not important, but you don't understand how it's the mayor who run your city.
Yeah.
So you better understand the mayor. You better understand his philosophy, whether he's Democrat or whether he's Republican. I'm not into the, I'm a Democrat by trade, but I'm not into Democrat. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm for who's gonna do the best for my community. You have to understand your state representatives, and they got those people all broken down. So you're not understanding all of them. You're only understanding the one that's in your area, because that's who you have the power to vote for. You have to understand your city, county councilors, because they're the ones that reflects you, and they're the ones that run the city. So if you don't vote for these people, if you don't get off your behind and get down there and vote for these people, suppression or not, if you don't vote for them, then you're sitting it up. And that's why the Republicans could come into Georgia and change all these bills and write all this stuff and make all this stuff a reality to suppress us at voting. And that's everywhere. It's not.
And you know what? You are absolutely right, because, and I was guilty of that not so long ago. I remember when I was young and just started voting, my focus was always on the president. Mm-hmm. Every 4 years, you think about whoever's going to be elected president. And the harsh reality, the president, for the most part, is a little more than a figurehead. The one who really impacts your day-to-day and your life is local government.
Government.
You are absolutely right.
And if you don't get that right, it doesn't matter what we say or what we do. It doesn't matter how suppressed we are, because they will always have laws put in there. They make the policies. Mm. They vote on the policies representing us. So you better make sure that you have who you want to represent you in that office.
Yeah. Yeah. People really do need to get involved with the lowest level.
That's right.
Politics, not just focusing. I'm not saying the president isn't important. Of course it is, but you should really, and to your point, Cynthia, if you ask the average person to name all their representation from the lowest to the highest, they probably couldn't. Think about it.
I mean, people look at judges.
Judges is important.
Some are appointed, and Trump appointed over 200 and I don't know how many.
Yes, he did.
Judges. Think about that. That's going to affect policy. And then some judges you vote on. Half the people that were voting for judges, because we were asking them, they didn't know who they were voting for.
I'm going to tell you what, Cynthia, I am so guilty. I had a judge on one of my shows, and she was running for it. I really liked her. I liked all her policies. And the question came up, well, how do you normally vote for judges? I'm embarrassed to say, we had such a long list. Pages.
Mm-hmm, right.
You know what I do? I look at the name and I go, oh, they look like they may be a person of color. Oh, they look like they. I know that's horrific, because I don't know who they are on an individual basis. I know some
take so much for granted.
Yeah,
but that's the way, to me, that is done by design, because judges don't campaign.
Show them.
They don't kiss the babies and go to the church. No. You just see a whole shopping list of names. They're like, who is that? So that's right. Eeny, meeny, miny. That's what I would do. It won't happen again. And we have to educate ourselves. We educate ourselves on everything else. We have to educate ourselves on that. One of the things that they were saying that could potentially stop voter suppression, or at least kind of, mitigate it, is to make things that they're doing public. They said that there was a truck that was circling the Georgia legislator.
Oh my gosh.
Banner that said, Georgia Republicans don't want Black people to vote. And this is a state where voters of color are 40% of the electorate. Georgia was the only state in which Black people made up a majority of Joe Biden's voters. So Black voters and voters of color are a very influential segment of the electorate in Georgia. They have to get this out. They have to let people know. To Cynthia's point, a lot of times voter suppression succeeds because people don't even know what's going on. You don't even know what's happening.
You don't.
They're able to pass it under the rug and just think there won't be any outrage because people won't really be following. You know, when some of the people got up to go to the poll to vote, okay, so you get up, you have to work, you got maybe an hour or so, you go to what you think is a poll, that place is closed. Then you find out the next poll to go, and there's a line that's 2 hours, and you can't wait, so you got to go to work. I mean, the games. Liz, I'm sorry, I look like you had something to say.
Oh no, well, and of course, I could say that is just to piggyback in regards to what you guys were saying, which I do agree, that we have to educate ourselves. We have to take that extra mile, study as far as the candidates, know our local officials, and vote. And not only vote, but also share that information with friends. Post it on social media, because that's how you get the word out.
That's
right. Put them on front. Right.
That's right.
And plus that will help a lot, because trust me, people are all into social media all the time, sending the others. So we would like to post as far as, all types of things. So post it. Yes, it is political, and we can make a difference. Yeah. And, speaking of we can make a difference, which I know people, and plus they don't vote, thinking that their vote do not make a difference, but it does. Look what happened in Georgia. Look what happened as far as who is the president right now today. So your vote will make a difference. So you just have to take the time to do it, get that knowledge, educate yourself, and do what you got to do to make tomorrow better. Exactly. And I'm not running for office, by the way.
It sounded like you were. And vote for me, and God bless this city, and God bless America.
Vote for Liz.
To Cynthia's point, oftentimes they do it so underhandedly. They have tried to cut days of weekend voting.
Oh, yeah.
Including that Sunday voting. Now, I don't know about you, but Black churches use this so to the polls. So we have a bus that leaves after church on Sunday to take people downtown to vote. And that's common in Black communities. They wanted to repeal that and cut that out. They even said something to the fact where if you're waiting in a long line to vote, like in Alabama or Georgia, somewhere it's hot, you can't even give them water. Did anybody hear that?
Yeah, I did. I did hear that.
So they really are trying to repeal or severely restrict everything. And it's not just in the state of Georgia, but Georgia is a great place to start talking about it, because there's so many things that have happened in the state of Georgia. There's so many bills.
And also Georgia was a state that gave us power in the House.
Yeah.
So it's very significant, and it's coming up again in another year or two.
Absolutely.
So Georgia is extremely important.
Georgia is important. That's why Georgia's
and
on
so we got to go back to what Liz is saying. We got to educate people. If they don't give us water, if you go out there to vote, you bring your own water.
That's right. Bring your own.
But we have to educate them to tell them.
That's exactly it.
This is what they're doing. So,
and that's where social media come in at, and that's flyers and everything. We got enough people that's working in these communities. How we're going to solve a lot of this is block by block. We have to take control of our community, and we have to take control of educating them, of empowering them.
Absolutely.
That's how it's going to have to get done. We can't wait on the man to do it, because he's not going to do it. He does not care.
When I was growing up, my father, who was originally from Mississippi, our father,
Durant,
who's originally from Mississippi, always told us that we have to intentionally and purposely not only be 2 times better, we have to be a step ahead.
That's right.
And that's what we have to start doing. We have to be a step ahead of them, because they're always creating and thinking of ways to be a step ahead of us. We're a very creative, innovative, and intelligent people. We have to focus on what we need to focus on and be a step ahead. You can't have so much faith. Everyone thinks, well, the courts are going to do the right thing. Cynthia pointed out very well, when Donald Trump was in office, he appointed 234 judges, including 3 new members of the Supreme Court. I think the courts are going to be very lenient toward these Republican efforts, There may be a few really extreme provisions that they strike down, something that's really crazy. But on the whole, I think the courts are going to say that we think states should be able to run their elections
That's
how
right.
they see fit. So we have to be proactive, forward thinking, and be a step ahead. I absolutely agree.
And stop waiting. What are we waiting on?
We're waiting.
We're always waiting. You know, and people sometimes use scripture to validate what they're doing. God helps them, but he empowers you to help yourself. It starts with you. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to have anything with whether we're talking about gun violence, whether we're talking about domestic violence, whether we're talking about voters suppression, whatever we're talking about, it starts with us.
That's right.
We have to empower our community. We have to build this nation block by block. Simple as that.
And that building means, in this instance, revamping it. We have to change.
That's right.
We have to intentionally make things equitable. We just can't sit and wait. Oh, legislating. Oh, are this and that.
Yeah, we're waiting on the politicians. We're waiting. We can't wait on those people.
No.
I mean, come on.
So yeah, that's this. You know, we can probably go on and on and on about this, but there's a bonus segment that I'm going to start talking about. Is the music destroying generations? And this is what I want to do for a future show. I want to talk about the music, particularly rap / hip hop. I'm not talking about that message music with positive messaging, but I'm talking about basically mainstream rap and hip hop. Is this music destroying generations? You know, I was talking to a young person last week who does music, in fact, and I was surprised that he said that it is that music. I've been saying this for a while, and I get shot down, and that's okay. People don't realize the messaging in music. There is almost nothing of value to be found in these songs. Most of them are about drugs, sex. I'm not saying 100% because there's a lot of great message music and a lot of great artists that are doing things with positive messaging. But for the most part, they're about drugs, sex, money, and gang affiliation. You know, a lot of this stuff. So if you got a 9-year-old, 10-year-old sitting up singing this, they're ingesting it. A young girl, 14 years old, would think it's good to be with an F-boy. You know what an F-boy is, right? I don't have to say what an F-boy is. Because
what's an F-boy?
What's an F-boy?
Fine?
Not fine. No. Anyway.
Is there a U in it?
Yeah.
Oh, that boy. Okay.
An F-boy. You know, because the songs talk about an F-boy. So they think it's something good.
Liz.
I mean, think about it. When 30 years ago, when people were dating and going to the Cotton Club and Rick's, what they would want it to know is, where do you work? You know, what do you do? Now,
that's true.
I mean, think of when you were dating.
True. That's true.
Now it's a whole different, and you know, I want to also talk about being lonely too. There's so many topics that I want to talk about because it's a horrible feeling when a woman or a man is lonely and it makes them do crazy things. But nowadays, and I think a lot of it is because of the music. So I'm going to have a call out to people who are willing to candidly talk about this, you know, to discuss it, to talk about how the music is impacting generations. How not only is the music impacting it, look at who they're even getting into the music industry. I mean, you have so much great talent. If you're not just about rapping or doing hip hop, it's hard to even break in. Because when you go, number one, when you go to these big record companies, if you try to get a deal, they're going to route you to their black arm. And their black arm is normally hip hop and rap. And if you don't do that genre of music, then you better go indie. But that's a whole different discussion. We're going to talk about that in another meeting.
But I would like to say this because don't get me wrong, and I think music do affect us because it affected me when I was growing up, but we had music, so I mean it affected me hopefully in a positive way. But I know music affect you. But I would like to say is that, and I think all of this is really sum it up is really holding whoever accountable. It's holding people accountable. And I would like to say not all politicians are bad. We have some good politicians. We have some good people who are doing some great things.
We do.
But you got to hold people accountable. You have to hold people accountable. If you don't, then shame on you.
Did you notice, Liz, how Cynthia kind of circled back to the political realm because she's an elected official out of Indianapolis, so that's just what she does. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Cynthia. You're absolutely right. We do have to hold them accountable. You're right, but I still want to have a call out to anyone who wants to get on here and candidly, openly, and honestly. I don't want to argue. I just want to talk. So let's just talk about it. Again, you can
but think about it, Janice, going back to your music thing. We were coming around with Snoop Dogg and LL Cool J and all those rappers. I mean, there's always have been rappers.
But those were fun rappers.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. They were always. What is so different? Why is it so harsh and so mean and cruel and degrading now? Why do we have to degrade someone in order for us to feel good?
Well, so if you hear that and you're 9 years old, aren't you going to think that's how it is?
Yeah.
No, but you guys, here is the thing. Everyone have an option just to purchase what they want to purchase. You don't have to purchase the stuff. Just as simple as that.
Yeah, when you're young and it's popular, you're going to listen to it. When you're young and it's popular and your girlfriend, our time is just about up, ladies.
Oh my gosh.
I want to thank you again.
We need more time. We need more time.
I want to thank the public. I want to thank anyone who tuned in. I want to thank if you watch it a rebroadcast or watching it live. I want to thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk on Indie TV. As we wrap the show up, I want to also thank my panelists, Cynthia and Liz. And Elizabeth for being a panelist. Also, a big thank you again to our listening audience. At 9 p.m., The Man Cave will air live on Facebook. If you have not yet seen The Man Cave,
I have.
You have to see these 5 men, and they talk candidly about politics, sports, and women, and everything in between. They're absolutely fabulous. So it's almost 8 o'clock now, so you have an hour to get something to eat, to make that call, or just rest. But do tune in to The Man Cave at 9 o'clock. Until next week, be blessed and know that he has a plan. Signing off.
Camped out at home for COVID? Join us, Indie TV, where you will see the talk shows, movies, drama, action, and comedy. Be the first and see it first. Sign up now for free at Indie TV.